Have you ever had this happen? You look at your calendar, and there it is. A wide-open weekend. A whole afternoon with nothing scheduled. Perfect, you think. Finally, I can get to that big project, or I'm going to learn that new skill. But then, the day just slips by. You find yourself scrolling, watching random videos, and feeling totally, completely unmotivated. It is so frustrating, right? Well, in this explainer, we're going to dive deep into the science behind why this happens and give you a real toolkit to get your free time back on track.
It really all boils down to this one simple question. The more free time we have, why in the world do we so often get lazier? I mean, it feels like it should be the total opposite. We dream about all the amazing things we'd accomplish if we just had the time. But when that time finally shows up, our drive just vanishes. What is going on here?
I'm guessing this little comparison looks pretty familiar. We have this grand expectation that free time is going to unlock this huge burst of productivity and creativity. But the reality for so many of us, it's just procrastination and this weird heavy feeling of lethargy. If you've ever felt that, trust me, you are in very, very good company.
So this experience is so universal it actually has a name, the common paradox of leisure. We think more time equals more output, but the truth is often the other way around. When we're kind of busy, we feel focused, we feel driven, but when we're staring down a long, empty stretch of time with no structure, we just tend to drift and put things off.
Okay, and this is maybe the most important point I want you to take away today. This is not a personal failing. It is not some sign that you have weak character or that you lack willpower. It's a predictable, biological result of how our brains are fundamentally wired. See, our brains just aren't designed to perform at their best in an empty, unstructured vacuum. They're actually designed for something very different.
And that something else is an incredibly powerful mental state known as flow. This is the secret, the antidote to that paradox of leisure. Flow is that amazing state where productivity and deep satisfaction meet. And the best part is, it's something we can actually learn to create on purpose.
So, what in the world is flow? Well, the term was coined by the legendary psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. He described it as this optimal state of consciousness where you are so completely absorbed and immersed in an activity that literally everything else just disappears. Your sense of time gets all warped, that nagging inner critic in your head goes silent, and your performance just flows.
But here's the thing, flow doesn't just happen by accident. It needs very specific conditions. Think about this chart. If a task's challenge is way too low for your skill level, you get bored. Makes sense, right? Now, if the challenge is way too high, you get anxious and overwhelmed. Flow happens in that beautiful sweet spot, right in the top right corner, where the challenge of what you're doing is perfectly matched to your current skill level. It's got to be hard enough to keep you interested, but not so hard that you want to give up.
Okay, so if flow is the goal, why does a wide-open schedule seem to push us in the complete opposite direction? Well, it turns out there are 3 key scientific reasons that explain why having tons of free time so often leads to doing absolutely nothing.
First up is what's called the understimulation effect. Your brain needs a certain level of engagement just to stay alert and focused. When your schedule is totally empty, there's no challenge. So what happens? Your baseline level of dopamine, the motivation molecule, it actually drops. And to fix that, your brain goes on a hunt for the easiest, fastest hit of stimulation it can find. And that usually means social media, binge-watching TV, or other easy, passive distractions.
Second, it's all about how that dopamine system really works. Your brain is incredibly efficient. It is not going to release a precious resource like motivational dopamine unless it sees a really clear, achievable goal just around the corner. A vague idea like, I'm going to work on my project this weekend. That's just too fuzzy. The brain doesn't see a clear reward, so it doesn't give you the chemical gas you need to get started.
And the third reason? Well, it's the famous Parkinson's law, which I'm sure you've heard of. It says that work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. When you have all day to do something, the task just seems to get bigger and bigger in your mind, and it loses all sense of urgency. There's no pressure to start because the deadline feels a million miles away. And that lack of gentle pressure is exactly what keeps the engine of motivation from ever turning over.
Okay, so we've totally diagnosed the problem. We get the paradox, we know the goal is flow, and we understand the brain science behind why we get stuck. Now, let's get to the really exciting part, the 5 concrete science-backed solutions that you can actually use to escape this trap and find your flow.
Solution number 1 is to create your own mild artificial pressure. This whole idea is based on a psychological principle that shows our performance actually peaks with a moderate amount of healthy stress. Just think of it like a bell curve. No pressure, you get bored. Too much pressure, you get anxious. But that sweet spot right in the middle, that's where we do our absolute best work.
So, how do you actually do this? First, you gotta forget, I'll work on this today. Instead, set a really sharp, specific deadline. Something like, I will write 300 words in the next 45 minutes. Second, tell somebody your plan. Just a little bit of social accountability can work wonders. And third, mentally frame the task as something that has to be done right now, not later.
Solution number 2 is to use what I call a micro start. Your brain puts up a huge fight against big, scary, intimidating tasks, but it has almost zero resistance to starting a tiny one. This uses a fascinating psychological quirk. Our brains cannot stand leaving things unfinished. As soon as you start something, even for just a moment, it creates this open loop in your mind that you'll feel a natural, powerful pull to close.
And how to apply this is ridiculously simple. All you have to do is commit to working for 5 minutes. That is it. Your only goal is not to finish the entire project. It's just to begin. I promise you, more often than not, once those 5 minutes are up, all that initial friction is gone, and you'll probably find yourself in a state of flow, and you'll just want to keep going.
All right, so once you've started, the real key to staying in flow is to progressively increase the challenge. Remember that perfect balance between challenge and skill? Well, flow dies a quick death if a task becomes too easy and boring. To stay engaged, you need to feel a sense of growth, of mastery.
So how can you apply this? After each work session, just ask yourself, how can I make this just 5% more challenging next time? Maybe you try to write a little faster, or you try to solve a slightly harder problem. The goal here is to focus on improving your skills, not just cranking out work. That feeling of growth is the fuel that keeps the flow state alive.
Now this one is absolutely critical. You have to stop trying to win a battle of willpower against your environment and start designing an environment where you don't even need willpower. This is a concept from behavioral science called choice architecture. And the basic idea is that your surroundings have a massive, massive influence on your behavior.
So practically speaking, this means making focus the path of least resistance. Close all those extra tabs. Put your phone in another room. Seriously, clear your desk of everything except the one thing you're supposed to be working on. You want to make it physically difficult to get distracted and incredibly easy to do the work. And finally, the most powerful and sustainable motivation of all comes from a sense of meaning. We are most driven when our actions feel deeply connected to who we are and, more importantly, who we want to become. It's really about finding the why that's hiding behind the what.
So before you start a task, just take 30 seconds, that's all, and ask yourself one of these questions. How does writing this report connect to my value of professional excellence? Or, how is practicing this instrument helping me become a more creative person? When you link the task to your core identity, you unlock this deep intrinsic motivation that just blows right past procrastination.
Okay, let's bring this all together now. The big takeaway here is that laziness isn't a character trait, it's a direct result of being in the wrong conditions. So when you feel stuck, the solution isn't to blame yourself or to try and muscle through it with willpower. No, the solution is to step back and become an architect of your own focus, to redesign the conditions around you so that flow can just emerge naturally.
And this quote, it just captures the entire heart of the matter. True mental freedom, true creativity, it doesn't come from a blank canvas and endless time. It comes from creating just enough structure, just enough discipline to quiet all those distractions and allow your mind to be fully present, fully engaged, and finally, free to do its absolute best work.